to order. The August 15th school board meeting is in session. Dr. Day, pledge of allegiance.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Doctor. Agenda approval for work session. Is there a motion to amend the agenda? Any agenda looks okay?
There's a motion to remove item F2, which was to be COIA training that we originally planned for during the meeting. We've now are moving to take that off the agenda because it'll be done online.
So you're making a motion?
I'm
to take F2
making
out?
a motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
You see that, Madam Clerk? Dr. Day and Mr. Trost. Any discussion on making COIA training online? Right, Madam Clerk, could you call us a vote, please?
Mr. Jalil?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Ms. Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
That amended agenda is approved. The next one is student recognition. Dr. Edwards?
Okay. Did y'all vote to remove that vote was to
Also, we have to do
remove?
another vote?
Yeah, you have to now vote to,
Madam Clerk, could you call the vote to have the amended agenda approved?
yeah.
Is there a discussion on that?
There's a discussion on that? Yes, go ahead.
The only thing, this really troubles me, not so much of what we're doing, but the fact that one of the main functions that we are responsible for, it seems like we're no longer responsible for that. Just to be able to move money, we have to run and jump and hop to get anything done. I just wanted to express that, and that's one of our duties, is that financial, but the way it is set up now, that's taken pretty much out of our control. We can't even reallocate those funds, as simple as that.
You have to be there to support our superintendent. and our-
Right, I understand that. And I'm sure whatever, if we are able to get it, but just that fact.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote, please?
Mr. Jalil?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul? Ms. Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
We move on to item number D1, student recognition. Dr. Edwards.
Yes, so you all recall in May, we had student recognition at Heritage High School, and we recognized many of our high school, middle school, and even some elementary school teams, clubs, and athletes that made it to regionals and to finals. And at that time in May, we still had student athletes who were progressing. And we don't want to leave them out, so we had to wait until they finished their fabulous season, which wasn't until sometime in June. But we promised that we would also recognize the remaining teams from last school year who have successfully moved on into regionals and into states and have just represented us so well. So tonight, Whitney Boyd, who is somewhere coming, she's going to assist me and us. What we are going to do, let me just give directions first. We will be calling up the teams from Heritage and from EC Glass. We have them in two waves, a 445 wave and a 515 wave, just because this venue is smaller. And we're going to announce the teams, and then we're going to ask the students and their coaches to come up. We have a plaque for you, and then we have smaller versions for the students as well. But it's just a small token of our appreciation for your hard work, your success, and just making us look awesome the way that you do when you're out there performing. And again, we thought this might be small, and I'm counting over 10 different teams that we have. So that just shows you how amazing our students are and how great our coaching staff is as well. So Miss Boyd, who you all know is our family and community liaison and also my tag team partner in this, she will be calling up the groups. And the way that we're gonna do the picture in here is gonna be fun. So we're gonna ask the students to come into the center of the horseshoe, and then as board members, because we do have some students that are most likely taller than most of us, we're just gonna move to the side here, so we'll be on that side or the side there, so that we can all be in the picture. We will present the big plaque to the coach and advisor, and then we will have the smaller ones for the students. Got it? Okay, Miss Boyd, take it away, because you put this together. And by the way, let me just say thank you to Miss Boyd, because it's the first day of school. She managed to get this all together on the first day of school, and these children have been in school on the first day of school, and here they are with us tonight. So thank you for your hard work in getting that together.
All right, well, thank you guys. Thank you for parents and all the athletes, coaches, and everyone that came out tonight. So we will go ahead and get started.
I got it.
All right, so we will go ahead and start with the Heritage High School boys varsity soccer team. And their head coach was Jack Bottoms, assistant coaches were Shane Whelan and Trey Howard, and they got regional recognition this year.
Do we have any students from Heritage
I don't think so.
Soccer? Ooh, let's make it easier.
I know. All right, we have our Heritage High School girls outdoor track team. So some of their individual players received state and regional recognition, and then as a team, they placed third at the EA state meet.
Not here?
Yep, girls track team.
Congratulations, ladies.
Congratulations.
Go Pioneers.
Good job, ladies.
Do you want to put your bag over here?
Hang out with some really cool kids, man.
Scott will get us together. These are no strangers to winning here, this team here.
Everybody come.
What events do we have
Come on in.
represented
Yeah,
here?
If you want to push that chair out the way.
Girls track.
Sprints, jumps, okay. Okay, okay.
Hardcore stuff.
Everybody,
And parents will stay put for you, so you get a good picture too.
right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Got it?
Congratulations.
Coach?
Congratulations.
Excellent work.
Congratulations, guys.
I just thank
Ready? All right, we have the boys Heritage High School outdoor track team. So some of their individual players received state and regional recognition, and then as a team, they placed fourth at the EA state meet this year.
Man, you all did.
Now another.
Football on the other sports.
Are you serious?
And kids have already went to school.
Nice.
Yeah, we have some.
And everybody right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thanks.
Good job, guys.
All right, we've got our EC Glass boys varsity baseball team, and they were the region semifinalists this year.
This way and then those two.
Good to be young, man. Good Lord.
Congratulations.
1, 2, 3.
Go top.
All right, we've got our EC Glass High School boys varsity tennis team, and they received regional semifinalists this year.
Tennis team members here? Okay.
All right, all right. Yes.
Good job.
All right, our EC Glass girls varsity tennis team, and they were our region runner-ups this year.
Nice.
Good job, ladies. Absolutely.
Congratulations. Yep.
Hold on. The coach is there.
Thank you.
I know some of those ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miss Preston, back. Go ahead. Just
Come on, Miss Preston.
Oh, you wanted me to play tennis?
She's ready for that. Her husband too.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't know if our lacrosse teams are here, but our. Oh, we do?
All right.
He's representing. That's good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Elizabeth, don't leave it out, please.
You're supposed to be put in.
Okay.
Congrats, man.
We'll get you guys to tighten up.
Yep.
Look at you.
Backfield. World, talk the world, man. We supporting you.
I was at that game, y'all. Lacrosse team.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Our girls varsity lacrosse team. They got regional semifinalists this year.
I got it.
We had our EC Glass boys varsity soccer team, and they were named region quarterfinalists this year.
She's gonna accept that one too, yeah.
Okay.
All right, our EC Glass girls varsity soccer team again, they got region quarterfinalists. All right, EC Glass boys outdoor track team, we got all state recognition and all state honors recognition.
All right, then.
Hey, you know, you're not gonna believe this. Come here, Coach. Coach and I used to run together. Back in the day, right? Back in the day. A few pounds ago.
Coach back in there.
You should say that.
1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Got one of the teachers here, Coach.
All right, and last but certainly not least, our EC Glass girls outdoor track team, they also received all state and all state honor recognition.
Nice.
All this talent in this room.
1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Nice job.
That's everybody?
Yep, that's everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, thank you.
Ms. Boyne. Minutes, not minutes, 15 minutes. Love doing this thing.
Once you hit a certain age, it doesn't matter.
Turning the heat on?
Get it up.
What's that?
And create something.
Sorry. Good one.
Yeah? Okay to put on. That's what it is.
Since I'm the only track kid here from Glass, I do appreciate this, and hope y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Good work, good work.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. It was excellent. You move to item E1, public hearing for Dunbar School hearing, heating system, PPEA. Dr. Edwards.
I am going to turn over to Dr. Bodeka.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good afternoon, everyone. So Lynchburg City Schools is engaged with a process to replace the very old heating system at Dunbar Middle School, which is a steam-based system. It's a system that our HVAC crews have patched together over time, done an incredible job to keep that thing running, but it's time to now replace that. And we've been in conversations with the school board since March 21st, 2023, to discuss this project. This project is one of a number of projects funded by the COVID relief funds that do need to be expended before 2024. So typically, the board will not really directly engage with contract negotiations of this type. But the way we're procuring this works, it is a requirement that the board review that contract and ultimately approve it. So at that time, when we talked about it originally, we outlined the procurement process. This is the Virginia Public-Private Educational Facilities and Infrastructure Act of 2002. I won't go into detail on how that works because we've discussed it previously. But I will say this is the first time that LCS has used this process and only the second time that it's been used in the city, the first being the new police headquarters. So 20 years after the law was passed, we're now using it, and lots of other school divisions and counties and cities across the state have done so successfully. This process allows a design-build contract, which provides more collaboration between the owner, which is us, and the contractor and designer as well. This is a good way to do this process because of the replacement system of the steam system is fairly complicated, and so we need a little bit of flexibility as we get into the process to have a close relationship with our contractor. So the next step in the process is for the board to hold a public hearing on the proposal from Southern Air. This is something you received and reviewed in closed session previously, and that's what you're doing tonight. And so the purpose of the public hearing is to solicit feedback actually on the proposal, not necessarily the comprehensive agreement. Now, if you choose, after the public hearing, you can consider the attached negotiated contract for the project. Again, typically the school board would not be involved at that level, but in this process, you do need to ultimately approve that. The contract is for $3,469,559 to be completed over a period of 349 days, and a resolution to the effect of approving that has been included in your board docs as well. The Finance Committee did review this negotiated contract, ask a number of questions. I will say for the Finance Committee, I did neglect at that time to include Exhibit A, which is simply just the definitions that are found, so defining what an architect is and all those sorts of things, and so I have included that here. Nothing of substance is there as well. But if the school board does choose to approve the contract tonight, City Council will ultimately need to consider that option, and they'll be in a position to do so. And the agreement can be executed 30 days from today, if that's the direction we go. So, Mr. Chair, if you would, you could open the public hearing for this project, and anyone who wishes to speak on the Southern Air proposal.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
No, sir.
Any emails?
No emails.
Any voice messages?
No.
So, thank you. The public hearing is closed. Go ahead.
Others there may be somebody in the audience that chooses to speak.
We don't have public hearing at work sessions. This is a public hearing for.
Oh, public hearing. Is there any in the audience to speak for or against this contract? The public hearing is closed. Dr. Day, was it voted up or down in the Finance Committee?
Well, the Finance Committee only votes to recommend to the full board, not to adopt. But the Finance Committee did approve moving it here to the board. So I guess to make the discussion possible, I will make the motion that we approve this contract, and if there's a second, then
No,
we
there's
can
no
have
second
discussion.
needed when it's come from committee.
Oh, that's true, yes.
So the motion is on the floor to approve the contract for this public-private partnership with Southern Air. There's no second needed. Any discussion on this contract?
Were any of the questions that I sent in answered?
I don't think today they had the time to go into the detail because first day of the school. So,
So if you feel you need to have those questions answered before you can vote on this, then you would vote no on the motion.
Yeah. No discussions?
I
Madam?
have a question about,
Yes.
we did request that the documents contained be protected from mandatory disclosure. What do they mean by that?
So there are 2 volumes of the proposal. So there's a first volume, which you see on your board docs. There's a second volume that is proprietary information. So that information includes financial information for
Okay.
Southern Air and those sorts of things. The school board did review those, probably in June, I would say, in closed session. And so they did find at that point that they were acceptable.
Okay.
Dr. Vodka, what will be the timeline for this project to be implemented?
Sure, so once if the school board chooses and the city council chooses to approve this, we'll have, the contract will be signed effective 30 days from today, 30 days from the public hearing at least, so September 15th, and then we'll be almost immediately in design. So I think we'll be in construction probably first of the year, and we'll be done hopefully before the summer is over.
And just for the public who is listening, doing public-private partnership, you're not undercutting the due process of inviting other bidders to this contract.
Absolutely. So we had there was a whole competitive process that allowed for other folks to submit. We did not receive any other proposals, but that's not particularly unusual right now in the construction environment.
What you're telling me is a transparent process where other parties have, if they were interested, they could bid on this project.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, yes, sir, go ahead.
Are there any ongoing fees that we have to contract with either Siemens or this company in order to keep going?
For this project, no. We do have a relationship with Train, Southern Air, and Johnson Controls to help us maintain our facilities, but for the controls and facilities. But there's nothing related to this project.
Is that an annual?
It is. Those are annual contracts. Some do have extensions that make them multi-year.
All right, and what is the cost to LCS?
Of all of the
Just the ongoing.
of all the ongoing, it's in the tune of a few hundred. I can give you an exact number, but it's a few $100,000 a year. But that is something that we are evaluating right now because we feel like some of that work can be done in-house, and that's something we do know and we're working towards. But I can give you that precise number another time.
My last question is that air circulation we've been talking about since the very beginning. Is it being
That's
taken
right.
care of?
So there's a higher level degree of air circulation as a result of this project, and we've addressed that.
Our kids will be getting the fresh air. It's not just the hot water and chiller working.
Right.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Mr. Jalil,
No.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Mr. Trost,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Dr. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Edwards and Dr. Vodka.
Thanks.
Now move to agenda F1, youth risk behavior. Dr. Edwards.
Yes, so our School Health Advisory Board, along with Ms. Whitcomb Stokes, who is the administrative liaison, conduct a youth risk behavior survey, but they do a great job of breaking down the data for us. And they are here today to kind of just go over what the data says, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Stokes.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and Dr. Edwards. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to, we're going to present a summary because we have 46 slides and there's no way to get through all of them. You do have the report and the slides, so you're welcome to look through those at your leisure. We also have a few members joining us by Zoom that could not be with us tonight. So first of all, I do want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not an LCS initiative. CBAR, which is part, or somewhat CBAR coalition, under Horizon, provides the funding through the Drug Free Communities Grant. So again, this is not an LCS initiative. We just present it to the board because our students are the ones who take the survey. It is a federal and state survey, so we have to use certain questions and wording. So with that said, I'd like to present Kim Foster with the Virginia Department of Health, and she'll be presenting the summary.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for having us. We did a little change on the go because we understand we do, and we understand absolutely, but we have a little bit of a limited time. So as Zoe mentioned, you did receive the full report as well as the breakdown that we provided in the PowerPoint, where we kind of organized the information into some themes, presented some data, and tried to make it an easy flow. So I just want to talk a little bit about the YRBS, which is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And as Zoe mentioned, it's a national survey. It's been around since 1991. Nearly all U.S. states participate, and we're really thankful that Lynchburg City Schools allows us to take the time from the students to do this survey and provide this data every other year. The data is used by a lot of our community partners. It's used by the Virginia Department of Health to write grants, to look at where we should target prevention programs in communities and other programs to help support youth. So it's really valuable data, especially when we can compare trends, to national data to years prior to see if we're making any change in our community, and to look at differences in those 8th, 10th, and 12th grade levels. So again, thank you for allowing us to do that. As you reviewed the data, and hopefully you've had a chance to look through some of it, just want to mention how important it is to look at some of the relationships between some of the data. A lot of times you'll see increases in certain things that cause increases in other, or the other way around. So although we presented a ton of data in our PowerPoint, just, kind of be thinking about the causality. Also wanted to mention the impact of COVID in the last survey. The survey in 2018, of course, kids were in school, everything was as normal. And then the survey in 2020, the kids were not in school. And then again, in this last administration, they were back in school. So some of those comparisons may be skewed due to the fact that those students were not in school during 2020. So something to keep in mind as well. We did get opt-out permission from parents to be able to administer the survey, meaning that if they did not want their student to participate, that they could opt out, and their students were able to do something else during that time. We did have 128 questions on the survey, which is about the norm for the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And just mentioning some of the limitations with the data is that it is self-report data, but it does give us a good snapshot of what students are thinking, feeling, and substances they're using, that type of thing. It is limited to current LCS students, and we did have a very good response rate, thankfully to your teachers and all that helped us get this administered. You can see that data there. And for the sake of time, I'm going to ask whoever's controlling the slides to move ahead to the end, to 45, I believe. Yes, the strengths and wins. So what we thought we'd do is present some of the strengths and wins, some of the positive things we think came from this survey, and then present as well some of the opportunities for growth, or things that not just you as a school district can look at, but also us that are out in the community providing programs and services to youth. And let me just find my place here. So starting with one of the first strengths and wins is most students report that they have many opportunities to be involved in sports clubs and other sports activities outside of class. So we feel that's definitely a positive, that they feel like they have that support. Overall, students report having adults in their life other than their parents who encourage or listen to them. Again, very important that they're feeling that they have other supports in their community, in their schools, people they can talk to. Students and our parents are receiving positive feedback when they have done something well. So that, again, is important just in developing that positive image, self-image for these students. Students also perceive their perceptions of the future health risk associated with alcohol and substance abuse are increasing, which is good, meaning that their awareness is increasing. I think the only two substances where we did not see that, where we saw some decrease, and you're probably not surprised, was vaping and marijuana. You know, as you're seeing a lot of times, students are using vaping devices for marijuana, so that could go hand in hand. Also, with the marijuana laws changing in Virginia, it may make students think that marijuana might not be that bad. So that could be a cause in some of that decrease there. Students are also receiving reinforcing messages from parents and friends that drinking is wrong. So we're seeing that as a good driving factor as well in what students are self-reporting. Some of the opportunities for growth. Most students have experienced or seen bullying behaviors on school property, with reported rates being much higher in Lynchburg students than from their national peers. About 50% reported having been bullied or having witnessed bullying, and 12.4% reported being bullied daily or several times per day. But on a positive note, most students did note that they would tell their parent or guardian about bullying. Students did report carrying weapons more often than their national peers. And some of that data we saw a doubling of youth reporting that they carried a weapon in the past month compared to 2020. And that was not just that, for that question, that was not just in school. That was carrying a weapon in the community or wherever they were. And they did report that they carried weapons on school property less often than the national average. But still a concern, and maybe relates to some feelings of safety, you know, regarding some other things going on. Physical fighting on school property in Lynchburg is greater than national rates. And for this data point, we do see our highest percentages for the Lynchburg students at the 8th grade level. And then they decrease in 10th and decrease again in 12th grade. But on average, 22.6% of Lynchburg students reported ever being in a physical fight in the past year. Again, that's not just on school property, that is reporting that they had been in a fight. And the majority reporting that they had only one fight during that time. Students report a decline in social support compared to 2020. It wasn't real significant with the data in the decrease, but it was kind of surprising to us because they were more socially isolated in the last survey. So, you know, the thought would be that because they're now out more in the community and that they would have more support than they had during the COVID years in 2018. Students' mental health seems to be declining compared to previous years, particularly in the 10th and 12th grade students. 34.7% of youth reported feelings of sadness and hopelessness over the past year. So that is, you know, a concerning number. Yes, again, self-reported, but if they are feeling that way and reporting it, then definitely a concern. Intentional harm to self, greater than 74% of students reported that they have never intentionally harmed their body. And reports of self-harm, though, are four plus times, if they've harmed themselves 4+ times, is lower for 8th and 12th graders, but 10th graders report has increased by 6%. So I know that was a lot of words, but what we found is that some of the data, especially in this area and in the substance use areas, we're seeing that 10th grade higher than the 8th and the 12th grade students. And if we think about, they were the ones in 8th grade during COVID. So, you know, kind of thinking about what correlations might be there, that these 10th graders might be struggling a little bit more than some of our other students. And then suicide, 14.7% reported considering suicide, 10.1 had made a plan, 4.7 had attempted suicide, and the 10th graders, again, had the highest percentage in these areas compared to the 8th and 12th grade reports. There was, though, a decrease in all three categories compared to 2020. So overall, compared to the COVID year report, we're seeing some decrease there in the suicide attempts. So again, that is pretty quick. I know that you guys have had time to review. There's a ton of data points in here. As I mentioned, do you all have any questions or any comments or anything about the survey that you would like us to answer for you?
Thank you, Ms. Foster. Dr. Day?
What happens to the results of this survey now?
Yeah, great question. So after, you know, we have a chance to present them here to you, shortly they will be posted on the United Way website. That's where we've posted them in previous years, and they'll be available for public to see.
Are they reported anywhere? Are they reported back to the DOE or anything like that?
The CDC would have all of that data back to them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it definitely seems like children do better socializing together than being separated, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, like I said, points in comparing that COVID time when they were separated, for sure. Absolutely.
Since student feelings can be subjective, the data that you said may not be as accurate as it could be, as you indicated. Have you been able to cross-reference that data with area health metrics?
We did that, it's able to be done in some, for example, the data notes that teens are using birth control less frequent than they were in the prior survey administration, and we're seeing teen pregnancy rates increase. We're also seeing STD rates increasing, not just in youth, but in adults as well. So some of those correlations we can, you know, kind of add into what's being self-reported, and then some hard data to kind of get a better picture. Does that help?
Yes. Are you responsible at all with any messaging from all this data in subject matters to be given to the public?
I'm not myself. I don't know if the coalition does any messaging in regards to the data, other than publishing the data.
You'll see in the partnering, Dr. Tanya Price from University of Lynchburg. The next slide has the partnering organizations, and all of those organizations will use this data for grant opportunities and for community programming. So the hope is that this information will inform opportunities for additional education and programming for the community.
All right.
So that might be the opportunities for improvements and change to occur as a result of this data.
Because there'll be more resources around the students.
That's the hope.
And does the data get to the students themselves?
Because it's publicly available, the hope would be that maybe they would have the opportunity with their parents to review it. That's an individual choice if they decide to go out and look into it. I don't believe that it would be presented formally to the students in a school venue of any sort.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Foster? Dr. Day?
I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts to keep it
Yes.
brief. I know it's a lot of information in your full report to cram into a short presentation,
Yes.
so I appreciate the effort that took on your part.
I appreciate that, and we do understand. We're just trying to, struggling with how to take it down to 15 minutes. So hopefully we kept in that time frame.
So I have a few questions. Do you work with the LCS administration, like bullying? We need to tackle this either through the policies, so these issues, have you shared all the detailed data with school by school with the administration?
With the administration of,
Lynchburg City Schools.
Lynchburg, we haven't shared it with anyone beyond you all right now.
Okay.
But absolutely, it would be, public information, and when we're talking about, especially, drug-free communities and their grant and some of the efforts that go along with that, they'll be working with partners and sharing information accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Jalil?
Has anyone reached out to you from LCS to make recommendations as to what this data means?
No, we haven't had that. We were actually talking about that it could be a good thing for the School Health Advisory Board to kind of look into it and, make some recommendations on some things that could potentially be helpful.
So you're willing to advise them? if they
I don't want
reach
to
out you?
speak for myself. This is most of the school board, or School Health Advisory Board here, but we had talked about that.
I think that is something that, as the School Health Advisory Board, we would love the opportunity to speak into some of the things that we're seeing. I think the opportunity is what we're looking for, is the receptivity to receive some of those, that feedback. We didn't want to overstep. And so hearing that there might be some interest, we'd be more than willing to, as a group, have some conversations.
Okay.
Because you got one more question? Go ahead.
How has, what has been your experience in the past? Has it been smooth in the past, the interactions between yourselves and the board overall?
We haven't had a whole lot of interactions, but I would anticipate, based on our conversations, that there's lots of opportunities for positive interactions in the future. I don't think that there's just not been time or opportunity. I don't think there's ever been anything negative to speak to, or lack of receptivity. It's just an opportunity that we're looking forward to.
Great, great. So our main contact person would be you or you?
Or Zoe might be our best opportunity.
She'd be the contact, and then she could flow it through us.
Thank you.
And I think Dr. Edwards will agree with me. We will not let this survey go into the shelf. There has to some action needs to come out of it, whether it's reducing the bullying, perception that there are more weapons, and physical fights, which I saw.
Well, if I may, a lot of the work that you all have done in the past, we've kind of rolled into the school division. I mean, before, when you were talking about vaping, and we moved to getting vape detectors. So we've worked collaboratively with, Zoe being Ms. Stokes being the lead, but the information that you do share with us does get back to our classrooms. And I believe even in one of the elementary schools, we had a program just specifically for elementary. That might have been 2 or 3 years ago, or actually after 2018 survey, we brought some things down to the younger level so that they would understand and be better prepared. And just a lot of the work that you see right now on mental health with the restorative academies, the suspension center, all of that is predicated on the things that we learned from you, from the survey and from our, other surveys that we have. So I do think we have a great collaborative working relationship with you all. I commend Zoe for being the liaison between all of us, because she gets us activated. But I did want to assure the board that the work that you do is very valuable. That's why we make time for you here to come and share it with us. But we also act on what we see, what we learn, and we've got to be flexible. So we're, vape today, who knows what tomorrow is, but we just need to be open to what tomorrow is and be ready to it. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Foster. VDH and us have a very good partnership, and Dr. Price is a well-known, respected person in public health. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We move to item 2 has been taken out, so item 3, school security officer program review, Dr. Edwards.
Okay, and I am going to turn it over to Dr. Wodeka and Mr. Caputo.
Good afternoon again, everyone. So Lynchburg City Schools, one of our major goals is to ensure that we have happy, healthy, and safe school environments for our community. In an effort to do that, Lynchburg City Schools received a grant from the Commonwealth of Virginia last year to employ school security officers in our buildings that do not have school resource officers. And so since receiving that grant, we have been working to develop the program, hire some initial hires, do some initial training. I'll introduce Head School Security Officer Nick Caputo, and he will give a brief presentation just outlining the program. We are not asking for any action tonight. This is simply just a briefing that for you to consider. We have included a policy related to school security officers, but we're going to take that back to the Operations Policy Committee. But we just want to have that in front of you tonight for that consideration. Ultimately, the big question for this program will be whether or not we choose to arm those school security officers. That is a significant change from where we are, but we want to talk about some pros and cons in this decision, and we want to be really intentional about how we develop this program and making sure that we set up a program that is of high quality for our community. So right now we have funding for 16 positions. Right now we've hired 3 positions, including Mr. Caputo, and we will continue to grow that as we expand the program. So, Nick.
All right. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So if you would, I don't know who I'm talking to say next slide. So some of the slides I may read to you because they're important. Other ones I'm just going to paraphrase or direct your attention to where I want you to read. So first things first, the DCJS School Security Officer Program is essential to the future safety and security of the students in the Lynchburg City School System. This program places retired or former police officers with extensive experience and training inside schools as a school staff member dedicated to the protection of the staff and students. And approval of the program from the school board will advance the existing partnership with the Lynchburg Police Department by providing equally trained former police officers as armed security staff for the 16 school locations in the city of Lynchburg. Before we go on, I'll tell you the 3 big key items you're going to hear repeated is that we are employees of the school. We are not active law enforcement. We are former law enforcement, and that this is a grant-funded program. Those are our 3 big ticket items, okay? All of us have gone through the training that your SROs have gone through or are currently going through. Most of us are retired, having been there and done that, okay? So that's valuable training that you can't buy right off the shelf. All right, so with that said, next slide, please. All right, why should LCS have a school security officer program? The Lynchburg Police Department simply does not have school resource officers based out of the elementary schools. They're on loan or they share the responsibility. A best practices approach would dictate that we employ armed school security officers in our elementary schools. Our neighboring jurisdictions have SROs in their elementary schools. And then Lynchburg City Schools has approximately 4,000 students in those elementary schools and staff members as well. And they are not afforded the same level of protection as the middle school students or the high school students. The overview of the program, it'll provide armed school security officers in those 16 locations. Again, it's repetition here. That don't have the school resource officers. Those would also include some alternative locations, not just elementary schools. This program is made possible by the grant, like we talked about. We're going to dig into that in a few more slides. And then the school security officers are comprised of former police officers. Again, I talk fast. I cover a lot because I'm from upstate New York. So if you need me to slow down, just go ahead. But when I was told there's 15 minutes, I said I can do it in 3. All right, so next slide. All right, this is my favorite slide in the presentation because it shows the progression. The first thing that we did was we secured the DCJS grant. Then we hired a head SSO. We're in the process of seeking board approval, but at the same time, we're not just going to sit by. We're going to start building that program, establish an HR business partnership, developing the budget, resources, another MOU, evaluating the current MOU, things of that nature. And then we're going to continue to try to recruit based on our hiring priorities and then complete the DCJS training for the newly hired SSOs and then assign them to the schools based on priority. Next slide, please. All right, the definition. This is important. I'm going to read this to you. An individual who is employed by the local school board and who is responsible solely for ensuring the safety, security, and welfare of all students, faculty, staff, and visitors in those assigned schools. That is our primary function, to make sure that the students and the staff have a safe environment. We are not law enforcement officers. We're not worried about that conflict. Do I enforce the law? Do I enforce school policy? We're going to get into that on the next slide, which is right there. What is the difference between an SSO and an SRO? Simple. The school security officer is not a law enforcement officer. Again, the repetition, that's our big ticket item. We work for you. We're under the command and control of the school board. The SRO, the school resource officer, is a law enforcement officer that is employed by the local police department, trained, worked the street, gained that experience, and then he's assigned to a school. And ultimately, that SRO is under the command and control of the chief of police, not the school board. So those are the big ticket items of the difference. Okay, next slide, please. All right, the selection process for one of my SSOs, every applicant will go through the standard background check based on LCS policies and procedures. In addition to that, the Code of Virginia states that the SSOs may be armed if they have prior law enforcement experience, resign in good standing or undergo specific training with local law enforcement. There's a list that's going to be in a future slide that talks about what exactly we will do with the police department and their partnership, because this is truly a partnership with them as well. Next slide, please. All right, the training requirements for the school security officer. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but I will tell you we have 60 days from time of employment to be certified. It's a 2-day class. It's 8 hours a day, so it's 16 hours of training. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at a police officer that's got 20 to 25 years retired, and he's got all that experience under his belt, and then he's coming to us, 2 days, most of the time in that 2 days is reinforcing you are not a police officer anymore. You work for the school board, and this is what you need to consider when doing that, okay? They also will go through additional training through the local law enforcement agency if they are armed, because there's certain aspects of training requirements that DCJS has put out there, and that'll be in the next slide, I believe. Go ahead. All right, it's still, what does the training include? So the DCJS, it's going to be anything from school liability, personal liability, FERPA, federal and state laws, what is the role of that person, security awareness in that school environment, students with disability, mediation and conflict resolution, disaster and emergency response, and also behavioral dynamics. And it's also important to point out, we are not disciplinarians, right? We enforce the policies that you deem are appropriate for that school setting, and then we document that. We're the world's best witness. We present that information to the principal, and ultimately it's up to that principal and that school to decide what happens. Okay? What do we provide in additional training from LCS? Obviously, first aid and CPR is mandatory. We have to do that. Youth mental health, and then we're all going to go through MANT training as well. In fact, the 3 that you have, including myself, we're already scheduled for that. That's coming up. All right, and I forgot to mention that we also are a mandated reporter, just like anybody else in the schools. All right, so this slide, I want you to look at the right side first. All right, crisis intervention training, that's CIT. That's helped to identify if there's a student or a staff member in crisis, and then how you treat them. It's something we all go through. I was former LPD as well, so it's something we always go through there, and it's a great class, great training. Emergency evacuation procedures, and then threat assessment. We assist with the threat assessment teams, but we're usually not on the team. All right? But we are the boots on the ground in that sort of situation. And then if we are armed, that's where your attention would direct to the left side of the screen. Obviously, we're going to go through firearms training and annual qualification. And then radio procedures, as well as active shooter emergency response training. The radio procedures is really important because we will have a radio that communicates directly with LPD. So we will have the ability to go right to what we call Lincom at Lynchburg Communications and say, this is what I got, this is where I'm at. And every single officer in the city of Lynchburg is going to hear that go over that channel. And so rather than be dispatched or whatever, I can tell you as a former police officer, that is priority 1, no matter what you're doing. I can't tell you how many people got out of a speeding ticket or something because there was a priority call that came over and said, it's your lucky day, and boom, we're gone. That type of response is critical, okay? In the event that it does happen, Lynchburg Police Department will provide that equipment that's necessary for the left side of the screen. Next slide, please. Additional benefits of having a school security officer in the school. We will have the same training as LPD. We'll train with the LPD, with the same equipment, but remain under the authority of the school board. See, there's your big ticket item coming back to you. And then each principal will be able to delegate or utilize the expertise of that school security officer for each specific location. Every school has its individualized needs. And when I do hire an SSO, I consider the principals, I meet with them, and we try to pair them up where those personalities are going to mesh the best. Okay, next slide, please. Am I going too fast?
No.
All right, we have to talk about the good and the bad. What are the pros and cons of having a school security officer program? The obvious one, there'll be a firearm on school grounds. How do we go against that? Well, the SSO is a former police officer, extensive firearms training. Sole purpose of the firearm is to stop an active shooter. We don't have handcuffs. We don't have pepper spray. We don't have tasers. We're not there for that. All right. I can tell you, I was a field training officer, firearms instructor, a DCJS general instructor. I taught at the police academy. That's the experience that's coming with that. Next slide, please. All right. The opinion that the SSO program could create a jail/military feel to the school environment. I can tell you it doesn't. I've been here since February. I was the shiny new toy. Today, I'm still the shiny new toy. All right, it's great. My office, I have some of my flight gear from when I was in the military. I flew helicopters, and I'm right by the lunchroom, and they're all looking in, and they're fist bumping me, and they're calling me the secret squirrel. I think I saw you in the line a couple times, and I saw you looking at me, and Mr. Andrews, and you were looking, and I'm like, why is that guy looking at me, right? I was a shiny new toy. You see it, am I wrong? Yeah, I was right there. So it's the complete opposite. If anything, it's very similar to the Watch Dogs program. It's a positive role model. It's somebody that's there for the kids, right? And there's a study that's going to come up that's going to support that statement. Go ahead, next slide, please. All right, there's been negative publicity nationally in the media about questionable activity with some school resource officers. Nothing with us, all right? It's just you've seen one pull somebody off a bus or something like that, but nothing in Lynchburg. But unlike a school resource officer that is a police officer, this is the big ticket item. They have that pull. Do I enforce the law? Do I enforce school policy? When does my police officer status trump the school status? We don't have that. We work for you. We do what you want, what's best for that school environment that you decide as the board. It doesn't get any better than that. Next slide. Okay, here we go. So this is the study. This was the New York State Association of Schools. Following up the previous people that talked about children carrying weapons, that study from the New York State Association of Schools found that there was almost a 73% decrease in arrests involving the possession of a weapon simply because the students felt safer because it was an SRO or an SSO on premise. 73%, that's a big number. And that's what we do. Next slide. All right, why is this important? It's repetition again. Elementary schools and alternative schools do not have the same level of protection and staff as the middle school and high school students. This isn't a fault of LPD. We're partners with LPD. Those are my former, they're still brothers to me. They come and visit me, the sheriffs come and visit me, and they're people that I've known for years. But it's not uncommon for the SRO to get pulled from the school for competing demands on the street. And in that case, hey, I'm still available if you need me for an emergency. That's what the principals will hear. But I've got to go help out patrol right now because they're so short or something. That won't happen with us. Our focus is the school and everything and everyone inside that school. It's the DCJS grant that made this possible. And I think there's another slide on that if you'll forward to the next one. There it is. So the DCJS grant is a 4-year grant in the amount of $600,000 each year. Now, unlike other grants where you have to pay $25, $75, 100% of that, all you have to pay every year for that is the composite index ability to pay for Lynchburg City Schools. It's a big definition of 38%, okay? The first year was free, and then after that, it's just 38% of that grant. That's what it costs you. Okay, and then the annual budget for this program, it'll include salaries, uniforms, equipment, training expenses, but the grant itself is for salary and benefits. All right, this is the last slide. This one I'll read to you because it's important. Governor Youngkin and the Department of Criminal Justice Services has provided a grant-funded program that places highly trained former police officers in public schools to protect the staff and students. The approval of the Lynchburg City School Board for the implementation of an armed school security officer program working together with the Lynchburg Police Department will ensure the future safety and security of over 4,000 students and staff that currently have limited protection in the city of Lynchburg. And the last slide is just asking if you have any questions.
Dr. D.
Have you assessed the current situation or state of affairs in any of our individual schools at this point?
Yes. I created a PowerPoint for the principals that did receive some SSOs. So to get as much coverage as I have out of the few staff members I have, each SSO is assigned 2 schools. I met with those 4 principals, and we talked about what the SSOs can do for them, what they can't do for them, where are the lines sort of drawn in the sand of how they can utilize them best. And then I asked them, where do you see the need? Where do you feel the need? Those principals then get together and they actually developed a plan to share the SSOs, and then they had meetings with those SSOs and utilized them in that manner.
Okay, and thank you. And then secondly, what is the SSO's relationship with the students? How do you interact with the students?
Well, in the the first thing we do is when they arrive, we're there. We float between car drop-off ride line where you've seen me. I float between the buses. And then I'm in the hallway. I'm giving high fives, fist bumps. If you got a couple of the fifth graders that are too cool for school, I kind of walk funny next to them and build that rapport so that they can trust me and that they enjoy me. And they seek out that attention from you. They seek out that approval. And at the same time, when they're not following the rules and not quite acting the way they should, and they'll come to you for approval, that's where you come in. I don't want to say as a parental figure, but it really sort of is. It's the same way I treat my kids.
A role model,
I can't
maybe.
give you that right now because you're not doing what you should be doing. You need to do it this way. So we coach them on how to solve their problems better. Or if they're having a rough time, or you see that one student that's crying because they just got off the bus, that's where the police officer in me, that investigative nature comes into play. Hey, what happened? You weren't like this. What's going on? Do you want to talk? Do you want to come over here? Maybe you incorporate a teacher, but the relationship is there because we work so hard to build it in a compassionate way where if I got to take a knee and get down on their level, I'm going to do that. There's also, there's a lot of humor I use. I've had a couple of them where they're walking through the hallway and they look at you and I'm like that, and they do it back at me. And that particular student in particular, I came to him today when he was eating lunch, and I squatted down and I said, hey, don't think I didn't notice you were here today. And he started laughing and smiling, and that's the interaction. It's a great job, I'm not gonna lie.
Other questions for Mr. Nick?
Just one. You said that these are shared positions?
Until I'm fully staffed.
Okay, how is the scheduling determined then?
I let the principals work that out, and there have been incidences where the SSO went to one of the principals and he said, I need to go over to such and such school. If you need me, call me, but right now I'm needed over there. And she said, okay. And
Collaborative sharing.
yes, it's the way we have to do it. Now, I chose the schools based on geographic locations. I don't want to disclose where they're at right now, but I can tell you the schools are so close that it takes them literally 3 minutes by car to get from one school to the other. And even that could possibly be a faster response time in today's day.
Mr. Zalil, go ahead.
How many prospects do you have in line for hiring?
I have two that are really good prospects. And they're waiting to, one of them is waiting to see if it's going to be armed or not. And then the other one, he called today and he's ready to fill out that application. And I know him through baseball with my kids, and he's actually from a different county. I don't want to disclose, but I have some really good prospects. And I also have some people where I'm saying, hey, you got 9 months left. You need to call me when the time is right. I have been working with Delegate Walker on some DCJS stuff and some VRS stuff, and it's been changed as of July 1st that a police officer can retire on Tuesday and he can come work for us on Wednesday, collect his full retirement, and work for us as a VRS sponsoring employer, and there's no gap in employment, and there's no 60-day or 6-month waiting period like they usually have. So that's been wonderful.
Right. How is this program being promoted right now?
A lot of it's just by me. We have the website, the school's employment website. We just spoke yesterday in a meeting, brainstorming with some other websites to do. There's going to be some career fairs I want to go to, things of that nature.
Great. Question, are the SSOs going to report to you and then you'll report to us weekly, monthly, or quarterly?
The chain of command is the SSOs report to me. I report to Dr. Wodika. But I'm certainly welcome to come here and give you a report if you ever need it.
The chain of command will be you report to Dr. Wodika, to the superintendent.
Yes, sir.
And superintendent reports to the board.
Thank you. I appreciate everything, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Human resource report. Dr. Edwards.
Yes, actually things on the agenda for HR. Let me catch up back with you. All right, on the agenda, which we don't normally have on the work session agenda, but you do tonight, because we are still in the hiring season, is the HR report and the HR addendum, which are both up for action. Normally, it's a consent agenda, and you vote on it when you have consent, but there's no consent agenda. So you would actually have to move those tonight.
Right. Is there a motion to approve human resource report and addendum?
Move.
Mr. DePaul?
Second.
Second.
Dr. Day? Discussion on human resource report and addendum, both items together. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Jalil?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes.
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Ms. Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. Item G1, curriculum instruction policy update, Dr. Edwards.
Yep, so 2 policy work groups met, curriculum instruction and governance. Ms. Pugh met with curriculum instruction. I had reached out to ask if there were any questions specifically about any of these policies that were on the agenda, and I did not receive any questions. Did you?
I did not receive any
Receive
specific
any
questions.
questions? So rather than spend time going over each and every one of them in the interest of time, we'll ask if there's questions now.
You want them approved today, or this is just for first reading?
We'll always take
I
approval
was going to
today.
say, this is the first reading, but we certainly would take approval. Most of them, as you can see, were VSBA updates. They were all, the VSBA updates were legal updates with changes to the Virginia Code. The 2 that are three-year review from Lynchburg City Schools, there were no recommended changes from the committee.
What's the board's pleasure? Would you like to make it an action item, or
You can.
I'll move that we approve.
Second.
Dr. Day and Dr. Carter? Madam Clerk. Discussion on CNI policies. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jalil?
Abstain.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes.
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Ms. Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
8 to 1 abstain.
Next one is governance policy updates, Dr. Edwards.
Yep, that was my group, and we also met. I tried to put as much language in the public agenda so that you would know. A lot of the work we did related to the discipline committee, review committee, making those changes, as well as putting some language in for the academic success committee. And I wanted to call your attention to a new policy, BDDL, which is electronic participation in committee meetings. We had it for board meetings and work sessions, and this outlines what electronic participation in committee meetings will be.
Just for full disclosure, when we met as a governance policy group, we taken out 2 policies to be discussed at a later time. Policy BCZ and CBA, which deals with the superintendent and superintendent responsibilities. So we'll talk about those policies when we go to Charlottesville for our board governance meeting, because the norms and protocols are norms and protocols, but they are not policies. So as a school board, we need to discuss and talk about, should we incorporate them, and if we do, how do we incorporate them? So those 2 were taken out with the kind consent of Dr. Edwards, and they'll be discussed at a later time. Dr. Day.
Yeah, I have a question about one of them. The BCFZ advisory committees to the school board, the change that was made, we had talked about this, I guess it was last year's board that talked about the issue that sometimes these advisory committees, people become members but don't participate very much. And so we'd wanted to add language that participation should be recorded. But I thought we also wanted to have that attendance record reported back to the board, and I didn't see language like that in
Yeah,
the.
we didn't put that in the policy. We do that in practice because we do take attendance at the advisory committee meeting. So we can certainly share that, but we put the language in that they're expected to attend all meetings.
Okay.
Let's put that in.
And attendance is taken.
Yeah, I just think it's important that record comes back to the board, just as a way of ensuring.
We can add the language that
I
says
think
is
it's
taken and reported to the board if
Yes,
that's what you
that's my recommendation.
Okay.
I think it's important to have as part of policy, not just rituals or traditions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions for Dr. Edwards? So with that change pending, you don't want approval tonight, right?
I'll approve it with the change. I just got to go in and type the words in there. As long, if you approve it with Dr. Day's amended.
That the attendance will be taken and reported.
And reported to
And
the board.
reported to the school board. Mr., do you want to make a motion to approve it?
I make a motion to approve.
The governance policy, all right. Is there a second?
Second?
Dr. Day, any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jalil?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes.
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. Now, item H1 is a notice of closed meeting. And let me read it from Attorney Towns. Is she there? I thought she was.
Went upstairs.
I move that Lynchburg School Board hold a closed session meeting to discuss the following, as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A2, discussion and consideration of admission and disciplinary matters or any other matters that would involve a disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record concerning LCS students, as permitted by Virginia Code 22-3711A1, a personal matter involving the performance, discipline, or resignation of current or former LCS employees, and as permitted by Virginia Code 22-3111-A8, consultation with legal counsel concerning specific legal matter involving current and former LCS employees, employment, student discipline, and school law, which requires the provision of legal advice. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move that we go into closed session.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jalil?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes.
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. We'll go upstairs for the closed session, right, Dr. Edwards?
That's where you start.
Thank you. Should I leave this stuff here?